Okay, as I was saying, this came out of some research. As English majors, you probably hear a couple of different things. One of them, what on earth are you going to do with that major? You'll hear that a lot, right? And then you also hear, oh, well, you can do anything. You can go anywhere. And while that may sound encouraging for a lot of students, it sounds overwhelming or just unhelpful. And so we're trying to curate resources for you that are helpful and still encouraging. You can work in just about any field with an English degree, and you're going to hear some really cool examples of that coming up. But I wanted to let you know some of the resources that we have available for you. On the department website, there's a tab called English at Work, and you will find recordings of these specific events under the alumni panel videos there, so you can go and hear from more alumni doing even more options for professional work. The Alumni Stories is a database where you can read brief accounts of what people are doing with their degree. Sometimes they have advice for current students, things like that. And if they have listed email addresses, you can even reach out to those individuals for an information interview or to find out more about the work they're doing. But I also wanted to let you know about this first one, what can I do with my degree? Again, this is answering that you can do anything kind of question. If you go to that page, you will find a list of areas where you can use your work. Each of these is a drop-down menu, and I'm not going to go into the details of it today, but I invite you to explore. These drop-down menus will talk about different industries that you can use these skills in, different kinds of employers in those different categories, as well as recommendations if you want to work in those different areas. So these resources are online, and I encourage you to take advantage of those. If you're not ready to do an internship or start applying for jobs right away, this can just be a good way to kind of get a sense of what your options are and what's out there. All right, we are going to begin with our alumni presenters, and we will go in this order that they are up on the slide right now. And then there will be a question and answer session at the end, so keep track of what questions you have. They can be for the entire panel or for individual presenters, depending on what you hear them present.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming. I'm so excited to be here with you. I know you guys are super busy. Really appreciate you taking out the time, taking a few minutes to spend with us today. My name is Aliah Eberting. For about 5 years, I've been a marketing manager with BYU TV and BYU Radio. So they'll assign me TV shows and podcasts, give me a budget, and tell me to go make them fly. I've gone to work with some really fun TV shows and podcasts, including some that have won Emmys and some that have won Signal Awards, which are like the podcast equivalent of Emmys. I feel really lucky to get to work with the talented creatives who make these shows. But I don't work on the shows, I do the marketing. So specifically, what does a marketing manager do? So I own the marketing process from the very beginning to the very end. Each project we have, I'll shepherd through kind of this assembly line of steps. We'll take a show, we'll do some market research on it, audience research, come up with personas. We'll make advertising assets that appeal to these people. We'll run campaigns, and then at the end, we'll analyze those campaigns, decide what we want to do differently, what we want to keep, etc. And I'll kind of shuttle it through each of those steps and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So along the way, I get to work with a lot of excellent graphic design teams, video editing teams, copywriting, IT teams, right? Because we all work with IT all the time. And if you enjoy telling people what to do or sticking your nose in other people's business and giving unsolicited advice, this might be the career for you because there's actually quite a lot of that. Along the way, I also get to do some graphic design and video editing and copywriting as well. So there's a lot of variety. It's a lot of fun. I did not set out to do marketing. I was actually a math major for one semester, and then I saw the light and I switched to English. But I kept math as a minor, and switching between the two saw some really interesting similarities. Just like a lot of math courses, their purpose is to train your brain how to problem solve and analyze. Most English courses are doing the same thing. They are training your brain in a boot camp to be this strong, honed thinking machine. And that's why they say English majors can then go do practically anything, because you can take that incredible tool that you've built, that you've sculpted, and you can bring it to any field you feel called to work in. A little bit later on, I added an editing minor, and then I worked as a student writer intern on the marketing team at BYU TV, writing show descriptions, episode descriptions, blog descriptions, or blogs, and things like that. I also ran a writing craft podcast with some friends on the side and worked on building my editing portfolio. When I graduated, I was set on becoming a copywriter, but then I ended up receiving an offer for the marketing manager role at BYU Broadcasting, and I've loved it there ever since. So I am still there now. To my enormous surprise, English was a great degree for marketing. Turns out you can learn most concrete skills like SEO, ad platforms, video editing on the job by watching YouTube, cough, cough. But it's a lot harder to learn how to learn and what to focus your time and efforts on. But that is something that the English major really trained me how to do. So I use my English skills every day, and here are 3 specific ways I do that. First of all, market research. Oh, oops. How did I?
I'm so sorry. That's all of them that I got.
Okay, well that's probably on me. That's okay. We're just gonna pretend I can close that.
I'll take care.
Okay, ignore that. You can see them all here. So first is market research. At any given time, I have 10 to 12 different shows I'm working with, and they have very disparate audiences. So the English major taught me how to do deep research, how to put myself in someone else's shoes, which is super helpful when trying to get inside an audience member's head and what they're looking for. Next, communicating with flair. So especially in the entertainment industry, every single one of our ads is an audition for more of someone's time. If our advertisement isn't interesting or exciting, people aren't going to believe us when we tell them that our entertainment is, right? So communicating with flair is very important, and that's something every single one of my English classes helped me work on. Third here is data analysis. Now I know that sounds very dry, but if you survived all the literary analysis and theory of, English 203 now, you've got this in the bag, guys, you really do. Data analysis is nothing more than consuming information, whether that's writing, written information, or numbers, and making meaning from it, crafting an actionable story. The English major taught me how to do this, and it taught me how to question my own assumptions while I did that, how to be critical and look beyond my own biases. So that's great. Now, in conclusion, a little bit about me, a little bit about how the English major helps me do my job. And I mentioned that marketing managers, we love to give unsolicited opinions and unsolicited advice. So free of charge, in conclusion, you're getting 3 pieces of advice from me. 3 things that I would tell myself if I was going through the English program right now. The first of these, you're kind of gonna roll your eyes a little bit because it's about AI, and we're so sick of hearing about AI, right? But here's my advice on AI. Don't let it do your thinking for you. Hold tight to your writing and your analyzing skills. You've worked too hard to give those up too easily. This is something that we in the workforce are fighting too. Use it or lose it is very real. Do I still have my math skills? No. So that's my advice there. My second piece of advice has to do with the phrase, English majors can do almost anything. That is true, but you don't have to know what that is right now. You don't even have to know what that is 10 years down the future. On average, most people go through 12 different jobs in their life and 5 to 7 complete career changes. So you're not locked into anything for life. So after you graduate, try something. If you like it, that's great. If not, treat it as a graduate program, 1 to 2 years where you learn more and get more experience, and they pay you, and then move on and try something else. Once I understood this, it took a lot of the pressure off me to get things right on the first try, and I really appreciate that. And then third and most important, what has been most critical in my career journey, the most important thing you can do for career advancement is to seek the guidance of God, right? He's our Father. He loves us. If you put your life in His hands, He is the one being who is not going to drop you ever. He's not even going to do a fake out and make you think you're going to slip. He's going to hold tight to you. And I promise that if you ask Him, and if you're willing to listen and obey, He will open doors for you and take you places you may not have expected. I never expected to end up at BYU Broadcasting, but it has been way better than the plans I had in mind for myself. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. All right. Hi. Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. I graduated in 2017, so it's been a few years for me. Apologies if anything I share is outdated in terms of what classes you're taking. But yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about how I went from the dense, winding prose of William Faulkner to the very direct and concise prose of growth marketing at Shopify, where I work as a senior editor and writer. I do a lot of writing, but we'll get to that in a second. I want to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am now, a little bit about my time at BYU, English major, yay. I also did the editing minor. As part of that minor, I did a few internships, did BYU Studies, the Religious Studies Center. Loved my time on both of those. I'm going to shout out specifically 394R, is that still what it's called? Okay, that class I thought was very helpful. Kind of started to bridge the gap to professional writing that I felt like I had. And as part of that class, I did a writing internship here in Provo, just with a real company. I didn't get paid for it, but got experience. And then also did lots of resume workshops to make sure my resume was in tip-top condition to go out to the world. And that all paid off as I got a job at Adobe. And so I was there for about 6 years. And I started as an associate content editor, originally just doing copy editing, but then taking on more like developmental, high-level editing, working my way then into the writing world, right? Took on short form, emails, ads, web, eventually long form messaging, lots of campaign work, did a bit of content design. If you have questions about that, that's a good question for the Q&A. And then tone, voice, and style, so like style guidelines, things like that. I also got my master's there. I got a master's in marketing, so got it from Georgetown, was able to do that online, and that was a really cool experience. But enough about that because I don't work there anymore. In 2023, I made the decision to move to Shopify, where I work now. Shopify they're an e-commerce platform, so there are a lot of big local names that run their commerce through Shopify, names like Skullcandy, Pura, I think I pronounced that right. But there are a few more here in the Valley, and they run on Shopify, and they just do their commerce business. And so I work on the enterprise side, so that means I'm writing content for big businesses, not the small businesses. And so this is kind of some of the work I do. We'll touch on AI a little bit in a second, but also lots of editorial reviews. I do long form writing still. I maintain our editorial foundations for the enterprise brand team. And then I get to do some interviews with companies and like their CEOs and stuff, which is pretty cool. And so that's what these are. These are some examples. So the one on the left, this is my most recent work. It's a guide that kind of talks about Shopify's time to value and how it's like the fastest platform compared to other commerce platforms, getting companies to value faster than ever. Top right is a screen grab I took from our foundations. And so this is style guidance, it's tone and voice, writing principles, things like that. And I built those and maintained them. That's another bucket of my job. And then another one is this one right in the front, which is a case study. So this is where I went and interviewed a company, got some good quotes, and then I got to tell a story. So it was kind of like a creative writing exercise. And so that was a lot of fun. So my day can kind of vary here and there, right? I'll do some writing one day, I'll do some editing another day, I'll go tweak our style guidelines another day, I'll write a talk track for a webinar another day. So it's fun, I gotta kind of do a lot. And it's nice because when I get stuck on one thing, I can jump to another and then go back, and it helps a lot. And so you're gonna notice some overlap, I think, in some of the things that Aliah said and what I've got, just in terms of how English major skills kind of translate to professional skills. And so here's what I've noticed in my job. So the close reading, things like really getting into the text, really trying to understand that becomes a really powerful developmental editing tool for me. When I get a guide and I need to really look at what's it saying, are we saying it the clearest way possible? It helps me edit it better. The writing craft that we all learn, all those papers that we write over and over and over. That does translate pretty well, especially into long form writing, but I think the same principles apply even if you need to write an ad, right? Just like there's a story even in 5 words, right? There's a thesis, there's a point you're trying to make, and so that translates really well. Critical analysis, working with AI. One of the big things I've learned, and something that we've talked about in tech, is like don't outsource the thinking. Like yes, AI can do a lot, but we are still important. Like we still need to corral it. AI gets things wrong. AI isn't perfect, clearly. And so the analysis to pick apart, like, okay, what is good from what AI has given me, and what do we need to get rid of? Things like that. Research and synthesis, like taking all those sources that you pull together for a paper, that's just content strategy. They're the same thing. And then workshopping, bringing your papers into class, peer reviews. That's a good way to kind of workshop messaging. I do that all the time, working with campaign managers for campaigns. We have ideas on what we want to say, how we want to say it. We go back and forth until we nail down that messaging, and then that messaging guides the rest of the content we make. And so also some unsolicited advice. Kind of the other side of the coin with what Aliah said about AI, I would also add, just get comfortable with it because it's not going away. I like to think of it, I don't know if anyone's a Star Wars fan, I am, but when Darth Vader says it is useless to resist, that's kind of what it feels like. Like it's not going away. So I would say get comfortable with it. I have a favorite AI if you can have one, but just know it's very limited. It's not perfect. To Aliah's point, we are the thinkers and we need to shape what it gives us. I would say hold on to the principles. So these things, close reading, analysis, hold on to those principles because they can translate into lots of different skills. Building a portfolio, whether you have an internship or not, even if you just need to write your own stuff or edit things, I would say do that, gather it, put it somewhere where people can see it. And then this fourth one is something that worked really well for me is complementing the major. So for me, it was the editing minor. I really liked the way that the kind of art and creativity of the English major paired with the more tactical scientific approach of editing. And I think it was a good blend. Aliah, it sounds like math was your kind of complement. And so I think, there's something that you really love, something that kind of fleshes out that major. I think that's a smart move. And then finally, just be proud of it. I love saying I'm an English major. The world needs more art and creativity and poetry and humanity, and so that's what we bring, right? We stand out, and I would say that's what sets us apart. And so, yeah, that's what I got. You can feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, check out my portfolio, email me, and that bottom one is just a shameless plug to a Substack I write about movies. So if you like movies, you might like it. So thank you.
Okay, hello, so good to be here. I just want to call out that the anxiety of not knowing what you're doing with your career at this point in life is very real, and you're all doing great, and you're going to have a really great career really soon. So you got this. I'm going to call my presentation Knowing the Untrainable. I've been reflecting recently about the skills you get from the English major. And so many of the things I've learned from being an English major can't be taught in a job. And so many things can't be taught in the workplace. So it's kind of what I want to focus on, and I hope it's something that helps you feel very inspired that you really can do anything. And as you'll see once I pull up my bulleted resume, that I am trying to kind of do everything, and that's okay. So key English competencies, these are my favorite things that I've learned from being an English major. The first one would be, well, there are two things, but I'm putting them as one thing, inquisitiveness and attention. So I think just being able to be curious, ask questions, and paying attention to the text, paying attention to other people's writing, and just being very curious. I think our curiosity is what brings most people to the English major. So there's kind of this innate curiosity that I think gets nurtured really beautifully in this degree. So that you'll meet a lot of people in life that are not curious at all, and that's okay. And people notice when you're curious, and it really makes you stand out. Crafting and identifying narratives. I really like this one. I'm going to talk later about creating your own career narrative and using that as a way to, for lack of a better phrase, sell yourself to a hiring manager. And I've done it so many times and faked my way into a lot of jobs I didn't think I was qualified for. It's a really great skill. So, but you know how to do that because you've connected texts and you've done a lot of critical reading, and you can kind of use it in a real life setting in a lot of different contexts. So that's a skill that I've really appreciated from the English major. And then emotional intelligence and humanity. I just got hired on at Adobe, actually. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But my now manager was telling me in my interview that one of the biggest things he took away from our interview was that I had emotional intelligence. And I was like, how did you figure that out in 20 minutes? But it's a really big part of my current role doing deals because we have to be interfacing with lawyers and sales reps and finance and credit and kind of meeting those people where they're at, reading the room, understanding the context of where they're from and where they're coming from, and treating them like a real human to get maybe more technical things done. So that's the third thing that I think maybe you can notice how you've developed these competencies and lean into those, because they've really paid off as I've slowly started developing my career path. Okay, quick hit list of my background. It's all over the place. So I started out at the BYU Law School Library as a circulation clerk part-time because it was fun and easy, and I could do homework during work. So that was great for my sophomore year. I then entered the broadcasting world. Such a great place to be. I love BYU radio. And this is where curiosity comes in. I think I was in Professor Hornick's class and we got an email from the broadcasting folks and they said, hey, here's this job. And I said, that looks like a fun job, and I applied. And that's a lot of times how these things happen. You just see something and it sparks your curiosity and you learn about it, and sometimes that's your next thing. So, loved working. I worked for Constant Wonder. So yeah, very fun. Great people over there. I then pivoted to working at news, like live radio station, KSL News Radio, worked on their content team for a while, and then I moved into the executive producer role. So fun. I feel like that's where I really developed my work ethic. Day started at 3:30 a.m. every day, got off at 1. It was amazing, loved every second of it. Then I was a program manager at International Language Programs up until last week, and I've been a business owner throughout all this, so love Shopify, it's great, good job you guys. And then I started out in mechanical engineering, so I feel sometimes we love math and we also love English, and that's great. And I've always kind of loved both, and looking back on my education, I'm so glad I stuck with English. Now that I'm at Adobe, I'm in a more technical finance role, and it's so funny, I ran into my high school best friend, and she did like full-on finance her whole undergrad, and I somehow landed like a role above her, and I'm like, hey, how does this work? So just know, like, you really can do anything, and you don't have to do a really like mindless, boring degree to get there. So I feel like I've hacked life by like writing poems in my undergrad, and now I'm doing financial analytics, basically, and those things. So, yeah, and just know, like, maybe you're an English person, but you also really love science, and that doesn't mean your career can't also have science, and that doesn't mean you have to study science. Life is very long, and there are so many companies that really want curious and emotionally intelligent humans like you all. So let's talk about creating a career narrative arc. This is just a picture of a cat in Nepal that was really cute, that you should all look at. It has nothing to do with the slide. I would highly encourage you all, as you're thinking about your past experiences, and maybe this includes stuff from high school and you're writing your resume, weave your experiences into a story and be able to tell that story in a cover letter and tell that story to your hiring manager. Especially in your cover letter. I could talk a lot about interviews. I listen to a lot of podcasts about them because I recently applied to like 45 jobs. But having that arc in your head and being able to articulate how your experiences have been preparing you for a role is very valuable. And I chuckle a lot of times because I was recently, back when I was applying to jobs, I was applying to eBay, and I wrote this whole letter about like how my entire life has just been preparing me to work at eBay in a marketing manager role. And it's like, sometimes you kind of have to BS it a little bit, but it's really powerful to make that story and be able to tell it. So create your own narrative, be very comfortable sharing it, and that's paid off really big time for me. So yeah, let me just maybe say one more thing here. In my most recent interview with the job that I am at now, I guess I should maybe tell you about my job right now, right? So I work at Adobe. It's today's day 4. So I'm still learning a lot of things, but I work in a position called deal desk. So I'm writing sales contracts. It's actually very interesting. It's doing a lot more of the technical side of things, it's in the finance department, but it's a ton of interfacing with so many different groups. And it's a lot of looking at more technical data and turning it into a story. Like, it was so fun to watch my manager look through this sales record on Salesforce and just start laughing because he's thinking, okay, this sales rep is hedging his bets because X, Y, and Z, and this is the story that the numbers are telling. So I've been really excited about that, and there's so much of having great relationships with lawyers, with auditors, with credit folks, with sales reps, and being a very curious and interesting person and someone who can kind of meet them where they're at and know your audience and communicate with them effectively, so powerful. And it'll get you super far. So I can't tell you a lot about the deal desk role yet. Come talk to me in about 3 months. It's just my latest evolution, I guess. But just know that you really can do anything. You can't quite do everything, but you can try. So just, that's kind of my big advice of creating your narrative arc. So yeah, keep in touch. You're welcome to snap a photo, shoot me a text. I really never mind. I'd love to give you more. I think this is solicited advice, you guys. They solicited us to give advice. So I love both unsolicited and solicited giving advice. So yeah, that's me, Kate Davis, and good luck, you guys. Thanks for letting me share a little bit.
I'm curious, just looking back, Kate referenced anxiety of the moment, right? As you think about being at this stage of things and all the uncertainty about the future. If you can cast your minds back to the mindset or the mode that you were in as undergrads, what we want to avoid is to be blindsided by graduation, right? That you get to your second to last or last semester and think, uh-oh, now what? So, and I think about the Dickinson poem, instead of arriving at heaven at last, I'm going all along. So instead of arriving at a career at last, the idea of going all along, like right now, and building a course of experience alongside your course of study. What kind of attitude or mode of thinking did you bring to your undergrad career that contributed to your readiness by the end? If that makes sense.
Well, I ended up with the mic first, so I'll answer first. I remember distinctly, so my first job here was I was a custodial crew at the bookstore, and then I moved to the library, did special collection for a little bit, but then I got to thinking, at some point I do need to start building some experience. I need to be able to take something into graduation, and so I just started looking. I think there were some after hours meetings or whatever, just to talk about what opportunities there were, or things like this where people would come and talk about there's the church internship or there on-campus internships, things like that, and I just ate that out and I applied to a bunch. I didn't get into a lot, and then I did finally land a couple. So that's where I was at. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. My philosophy is that I would rather make money than not make money. So you can do an internship or you can get a job, and I'd like to get a job. So that's what I did. I kind of did both, right? You have to have your apprenticeship. But for me, it's kind of a more practical decision. So when I was at KSL News Radio full time, I was also in school. So I dialed back a little bit. So obviously everyone has their own path. I'm not prescribing that. I really, and there were it was hard to be working full time in Salt Lake City and then commuting down to Provo and going to class. But I'm actually very glad that I did. There's a little bit of social FOMO and event FOMO from that. But when I graduated, I was already employed. And so that just was a very nice thing. I think just realizing too, you could go on Indeed tonight and apply to 30 jobs. And that's pretty cool. You don't have to wait till you're graduated to start a job. BYU's pretty understanding, I'm pretty flexible. And so that's just what worked really well for me. I think earlier on I was definitely, you have to start building your experience somewhere. So sometimes that's more of the internship route or an on-campus job, but sorry if I'm outing you guys, but they pay a lot better off-campus than on-campus. So you could get a lot of kind of hands-on experience that way as well.
I'll just add real quick because these guys have pretty much covered it. a lesson I've had to learn over and over and over in my life is that things are always really scary until you start them. Then they get a little bit less scary, then a little bit less. But the worst part is right before you start them. The worst part of looking for a job is before you start looking for a job. It sounds really scary to maybe go work in corporate or go try some of these things. You just have to take the plunge, and it's not too bad, turns out. It's kind of fun.
Okay, that's great. I have more questions, but that gave you some question formulation time. Anybody want to? Yeah.
I'm curious, a couple of you talked about AI. If you were to be like English undergraduate students right now, what would your AI practices look like?
So just quick for the camera and people in the back, questions about AI. And if you're thinking back to being a student now, what would your AI practices look like?
So I'll go again. I think honestly it wouldn't be that different from what I use it for now at my job. So I'll talk about how I use it now. I basically use it to kind of gather information, and then I will take that information. Well, first I'll check it, because one of the things I've learned about AI is it hallucinates and will just make things up. It'll just, I don't know how, and I don't know why, but it'll just come back with random stats that like don't actually exist. And so I have to check those. I pull out the ones that do work, and then I will just kind of craft like an outline. So for example, the content I shared, that guide, I use AI for that to gather. I use it to pull all the sources that we had internally. I checked those, built an outline, and I took the outline back and was like, pressure test this. Tell me, is this a good outline? Are there gaps in the logic? And then it came back with some suggestions, and then from there I could decide whether I wanted to take it or not. And then I drafted it, and then from there just kind of took it to the team and everything. There have been times where I have used it to actually spin up a first draft. It's actually not terrible, but it's not good. So I then had to really refine it, cut it down. It gets really repetitive, and then the tone and the voice is usually off. So it's good for when I have a tight deadline that I really need to hit. But to answer your original question, if I were in the major now, I think I'd probably use it for things like that, to gather information, maybe test my ideas, but never to really do the thinking for me, if that makes sense.
I'll just be really quick. Like, obviously do whatever your professors say you're allowed to do, and not more. And also, like, my 8th grade beloved teacher would always say, don't let someone steal your mental lunch. Don't let AI steal your mental lunch. And it's hard, like sometimes we want our mental lunch to be stolen. But I think English majors are extremely smart, and I don't want English majors to be less and less smart. So I don't know really what to tell you other than it would be I think it'd be very easy to continually kind of give away those challenges of frustration. And there's a cost to that, an unmeasurable cost to that as well. So, and I also use AI all the time for, like, if I'm writing something that is mindless and I need to like review it for typos, and there's a lot of ways that I use AI. I'm not trying to sound very discouraging. I just think my favorite quote about AI is that I want AI to do my dishes and laundry so I can write and paint, and I don't want AI to write and paint so I can do my dishes and laundry. So that's my.
I'll just tackle on really quick. You also have to consider what the purpose of the writing is for you. For instance, if I go to the gym and I turn on the treadmill is going to run whether I'm on it or not. But my goal of going to the gym is not to see how many miles the treadmill can rack up. It's so I get, the energy and build my muscles and things. And the same is true with AI. At work, there are pitches and things I write, and I do use a lot of AI. If I was an undergrad, I would have to decide whether the writing I was doing was just to get work done, or whether the writing I was doing was part of my educational process, where I needed to hop on the treadmill and put my brain through that myself. And I still have to decide that at work. I don't have a lot of educational process things anymore in my job, so I just have to put the boundaries in place and keep my old brain going.
Great, other questions? Yeah.
So I noticed the two of you had minors, and I don't know if Kate
I had an editing minor. I forgot to write
Right,
it.
okay, all three of you had minors. Do you find that as necessary for your job going forward, or is it just very helpful?
So the value of a minor,
I liked my editing minor. I don't use it very often anymore, but in other jobs I've used it a lot. So it just depends. I feel like I always get known as like the office proofreader, and I don't really know why. I think it's because I say I'm an English major, and they're like, okay, so you can write. So I'd say that yes, I enjoyed my editing minor, and the classes were really applicable and relevant. I wouldn't say that I use it in every job, but also I think I do use it every time I write an email. So yeah, I think it's helpful. I don't think that a hiring manager cared about it ever, really, but I enjoy having those skills.
For my personal experience, I found it very necessary. I wouldn't have learned a lot of the skills that I used in my first job because it was like copy editing and style guides, things that I really only learned there. That's not to say I wouldn't have found something just as good with an English major. I had lots of options I was interviewing for. That was just the one I decided to take because it did kind of blend those two worlds the most. It's hard to say, do you need it? I don't know. That really depends on what you want to do and where you end up going. But yeah, to Kate's point, for me, it's been very helpful.
I don't know if I have anything more to add to that. That's great.
question in the back.
Does it, all of you guys are employed in other companies. One of you is an actual business owner. What are your thoughts on using an English major to make and run your own money versus earning money from someone else? Is it easier? Is it harder? Do you guys like where you're at in terms of that?
So the English, training in an English major for a more entrepreneurial route.
I sold my business last week, so I'm very excited about that. But it was a great 5 years of making crepe pans, crepepro.com. I think my English major helped me very tangentially. I worked with a virtual assistant in Pakistan, and I had to communicate very clear expectations with him. I did not like running my own social media, but I think the English major helps you be a good social media person. You have to do social media well to grow a business. And growing a business and making money from it is very hard, but it can be done. I wouldn't say that if your goal is to be an entrepreneur, can you use English major skills? Yes. I think it's just getting your hands dirty and trying things is going to be the best thing.
Other questions? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sydney, and I'm finishing the MA program soon. I'm on the job market looking for my first full-time job. So, Kate, I love how transparent you were about sometimes the goal is to make money, and your advice to craft a narrative of your career path. So, I think a lot of us are in the same position where we've done things for experience, and we don't know how to express the skills that we've gotten from, say, editing BYU magazines or being a TA or being a graduate instructor or research assistant. How do you express that to hiring managers? How do you put it on your resume? Any advice you have on that would be great.
So how do you translate the value of your undergraduate experiences into another context, a professional context?
And that's a great question, and I think there's a lot of really smart people on campus that can answer this better than me. Some of my editing professors did the best work in helping me refine my LinkedIn and my resume a ton. I feel like Susie Biddles, I should call out, was really good, and there was a couple other professors that are in my brain whose names I'm forgetting, I'm so sorry. But they really did a lot of practical hands-on resume work, so you could even pop into their office sometime and talk to them. Numbers, just figure out the best number you can harvest. I edited 200 articles a month for publication. Just for your resume, they want to see those numbers, and sometimes you have to maybe come up with your best guess. You're not going to know exactly, but having a number is better than not having a number. And then I would say kind of like those competencies I talked about, I would say those come in a lot more in your, like, they're gonna look at your CV, like every interview I have, they're like, why? What is happening? And then it's up to you to articulate that. So I think just be as clear and distinct with the numbers and like articulating the value that you've added to those roles or to the position or the like editing position, whatever you're doing. And then usually like cover letter, or I started doing more professional summaries at the top. And then whatever the job title is, like if there's a way I can kind of reverse engineer my experience into like something that's kind of close to that job title, and then write about how my experiences have kind of, like, I've called myself like a sales leader because I ran a preschool as part of my last job and I got enrollment up. And I'm like, I'm a powerful sales leader. Like, take that title, like, obviously if that's not like your technical title, to put it on your CV, but like lean into the experiences that you have and don't be afraid of like branding yourself in a certain way, even if it's like, okay, that's a little bit of a stretch. Sometimes that's what you need to do to kind of get their attention, and then you can have the conversation. Yeah, totally.
So once they love your CV and you get through to an interview, something I always like to keep in mind, and that's been really helpful to me as a hiring manager now that I do hire for other positions on my team, is everyone is coming into an interview with their own goals, right? You have your goals. I want this job. I want them to know X, Y, Z about me. I want them to think I am communicating well, right? All those things. They are thinking the same things. Maybe they're nervous going into the interview too. Maybe they're worried about how they're going to find someone who doesn't add more work to their load. If you can go into an interview with the mindset of helping them instead of helping yourself, hiring managers can really tell. Some of their top concerns are things like, I want someone who will make my life easier, not harder, right? So I'm looking for a self-starter. I'm looking for somebody who can work well with other people on my team. I'm looking for somebody who's a quick learner. It's just some of the top 3 generalities. So if you have great experiences like working on the magazine, if you can then flip that to be a solution to their concern. So they're looking for a self-starter. Hey, I worked on this magazine and I didn't have supervision, and here's how I'm going to show you that I'm going to make your life so easy and you're going to love me. They will really appreciate that too.
Yeah.
So, Kimball, earlier you talked about complementing your major with I guess you didn't say minor, but a minor. Would you say that there's any like wrong ways to complement your major, or is it just really whatever suits your interests?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a wrong way. I think, yeah, if it's a minor, great. If it's a job, like you need to tone down the time you spend at school and crank out the time working off campus, great. I don't know if it's writing something for yourself on the side, whatever, but whatever feels like it's kind of stretching, I guess. I think that's the point I was trying to make, is like kind of amplify the major, amplify the skills, kind of work them in different ways. I think that's kind of what I was trying to say. And yeah, a minor is maybe I won't say easiest, but like there's a path already built in, like you can take classes, you can go sign up and add more work to your schedule, and like you can do it that way, but I think there's plenty of other ways. It doesn't have to be a minor. I think just putting those skills into practice beyond classwork, I think is kind of what I was trying to get at.
In fact, would it be fair to say you guys have all stressed narrating, storytelling, that the way to complement your major is to have a narrative, have an account of how it complements. And that creates that reality, right?
You probably already have a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
Like you probably have more than you think you have. Even if it's like, I coached some kids or I helped volunteer, like it can be something that seems to you to be small right now, and a lot of times at this point in the game, it might be that you were on the high school debate team, but you went to nationals one time. Like that's really cool, and there's skills that you can pull out of that and talk about. So use what you have, and then eventually as you get more, you'll kind of, maybe not weaker, but maybe the smaller potatoes just fall off and you get bigger, but use what you have and claim it as long as you need to until you have more. And it'll just take a little bit of time, but we'll totally get there.
Okay, we actually need to wrap up. We have another class coming in at noon. And so I want to thank our panelists one more time.